As we age, occasional forgetfulness often becomes part of everyday life. Whether it's walking into a room and forgetting why or misplacing keys, these moments can feel worrying or frustrating. Many people fear that such lapses signal serious cognitive decline or the onset of diseases like dementia. However, new research and real-life stories reveal a different truth. Mild forgetfulness can be a normal, healthy, and even protective part of aging. Rather than a sign of failure, forgetfulness can reflect the brain's natural way of adapting, filtering out unnecessary information to reduce mental overload, protect emotional well-being, and maintain focus on what truly matters. Understanding this shift allows us to embrace aging with compassion, peace, and joy, seeing the brain not as a hard drive running out of space, but as a living, adaptable organ designed to grow, release, and heal. In the following sections, we will explore why forgetfulness can be beneficial, how it relates to mental flexibility and longevity, when it might signal a deeper problem, and how to nurture brain health with kindness and engagement. Along the way, stories of seniors like Helen, Frank, Clara, and George will illustrate how embracing forgetfulness can lead to a richer, more meaningful life. Forgetfulness, a normal and healthy part of the brain's function. Many people worry when they forget simple things, where they left their keys, why they walked into a room, or the name of someone they just met. While these moments can be frustrating or even alarming, especially as we age, they are not always signs of cognitive decline or memory loss. In fact, occasional forgetfulness is a completely normal and even healthy part of how the human brain works. The brain is constantly processing enormous amounts of information. Every day we are bombarded with sounds, sights, thoughts, conversations, and experiences. To function efficiently, the brain must prioritize what information is worth keeping and what can be discarded. In this sense, forgetfulness is not necessarily a flaw, it is a feature. It is part of the brain's natural filtering system, allowing us to focus on what is truly important and avoid being overwhelmed by too much information. For example, forgetting where you put your car keys is usually not a sign of memory loss, but rather a result of being distracted or multitasking. If your mind was on something else when you set the keys down, your brain may not have fully encoded that action into memory. This is not a failure of the brain, but a reflection of how attention plays a crucial role in memory formation. Without attention, memory cannot take root. Similarly, walking into a room and forgetting why you went there is often due to what researchers call the doorway effect. Studies have shown that walking through a doorway creates a mental boundary in the brain which can interfere with memory recall. Again, this isn't a sign that something is wrong, it's a quirk of how our minds work, influenced by the way we navigate physical space. Another important point is that forgetfulness can actually help us learn. By letting go of irrelevant details, the brain can focus its energy on understanding deeper patterns and retaining essential knowledge. This is particularly true in the case of learning new skills or concepts. If we remembered every single fact or step, including incorrect ones, we might become confused or slowed down. Forgetting helps the brain to clean house and retain only the most useful information. It's also important to consider that emotional and psychological factors affect memory. Stress, anxiety, lack of sleep, and even poor nutrition can all contribute to temporary forgetfulness. These causes are usually reversible and do not indicate long-term cognitive issues. When the underlying cause is addressed, memory performance often improves. Of course, not all memory problems should be ignored. Persistent forgetfulness that interferes with daily life, such as getting lost in familiar places, repeating questions, or forgetting important events, may be a sign of something more serious, like mild cognitive impairment or early dementia. In such cases, it's important to consult a healthcare provider for proper evaluation. However, for the vast majority of people, occasional forgetfulness is not only normal, but expected. In summary, the occasional lapse in memory is a natural part of being human. It reflects the brain's incredible ability to manage information, prioritize, and adapt. Rather than worrying every time we forget something minor, we can try to appreciate the complexity and efficiency of our cognitive systems. In a world that moves quickly and constantly demands our attention, it's actually healthy to forget things that aren't crucial. It's the brain's way of saying, let's focus on what matters. So, next time you forget where you put your phone or why you walked into the kitchen, take a deep breath. It's probably just your brain doing its job. The brain filters to function better. Why forgetting helps us stay focused. Our brains are remarkable organs capable of storing vast amounts of information, solving problems, processing emotions, and making decisions in real time. But this extraordinary capability comes with a challenge: how to manage the overwhelming flood of information we encounter every day. To function efficiently, the brain must constantly decide what to keep and what to let go. This is where filtering becomes essential. Just as a computer deletes temporary files to maintain speed and performance, the human brain discards non-essential information to avoid cognitive overload. This mental filtering system helps us stay focused on what truly matters, relevant tasks, important goals, and meaningful experiences, while letting go of trivial details that don't serve a long-term purpose. This process is mostly unconscious. We don't actively choose to forget where we parked our car last week or what we had for lunch 3 days ago. The brain makes those decisions for us, automatically evaluating the usefulness of memories. If a piece of information is not reinforced, repeated, or connected to other important knowledge, it's likely to fade. This is a healthy and efficient system that supports our ability to learn, adapt, and grow. For instance, consider how we remember someone's name. If we meet someone briefly and never see them again, our brain may determine that remembering their name isn't worth the mental space. On the other hand, if we interact with that person repeatedly, their name becomes associated with more memories and emotions, which makes it more likely to stick. This selective memory helps us manage relationships, tasks, and responsibilities without being burdened by unnecessary information. Filtering also helps with decision-making. If the brain tried to process every single sensory input or memory detail equally, we would become overwhelmed and paralyzed by indecision. Instead, the brain filters out the noise to help us prioritize, plan, and act. This is especially important in high-stakes situations where quick thinking is required, like navigating traffic-solving work problems or responding to emotional cues. Interestingly, creativity and innovation are also linked to the brain's filtering abilities. When we are not bogged down by irrelevant details, we have more mental space to connect ideas, imagine new possibilities, and find novel solutions. This is why moments of insight or inspiration often occur after we've stepped away from a problem or allowed our mind to wander. The brain continues to sort and reorganize information in the background, bringing important ideas to the surface when we least expect them. Of course, not all filtering is perfect. Sometimes we forget things we wish we'd remembered, like an important appointment or a meaningful conversation. But even these lapses serve a purpose. They highlight how memory depends not just on storage, but on attention, emotion, and context. The more personally meaningful or emotionally charged a memory is, the more likely the brain is to retain it. That's why we remember our wedding day or a painful loss, but not what we wore 2 weeks ago. Ultimately, memory is not just about retention, it's about relevance. The brain's ability to forget is just as important as its ability to remember. It's a sophisticated system of filtering that helps us navigate a complex world with clarity and purpose. So, the next time you forget a minor detail or can't recall a name right away, don't panic. Your brain is simply doing what it was designed to do, filtering out the noise so you can focus on what really matters. Forgetting supports learning, making room for what matters most. At first, it may seem counterintuitive to say that forgetting helps us learn. After all, education and growth often seem to be about accumulating knowledge, storing facts, and building upon what we already know. But in reality, the process of learning is far more dynamic, and forgetting plays a key role in making it successful. Imagine your brain as a library. If every booknote and scrap of paper you ever encountered were crammed onto its shelves with no system of organization or removal, it would become nearly impossible to find what you're looking for. Similarly, the brain needs to create mental space by clearing out outdated, irrelevant, or unused information. This makes it easier to access and integrate new knowledge. Neurologists and psychologists have long recognized that forgetting is not simply a failure of memory, but a crucial mechanism that supports adaptation and learning. When we forget, we're not losing information entirely, we're refining our mental storage. We're updating our internal database to reflect what's useful, current, and meaningful. Take language learning, for example. When someone learns a new language, they may initially struggle to recall certain grammar rules or vocabulary from their native tongue. This isn't necessarily a flaw. It's the brain prioritizing the new linguistic patterns being introduced. In some cases, letting go of the old helps the new take root more deeply and efficiently. This principle also applies to conceptual learning. In science, for instance, students may need to unlearn outdated theories to grasp more accurate or current models. If the brain clung rigidly to every previous belief or lesson, it would be harder to adjust to updated truths. By allowing outdated information to fade, the brain creates space for more relevant concepts to take hold. Moreover, forgetting supports flexibility. In a world that's constantly changing, the ability to adapt quickly is a huge advantage. Whether you're adjusting to a new job, moving to a new city, or navigating a shift in relationships, letting go of certain expectations or assumptions can help you thrive in a new environment. Learning isn't just about adding knowledge, it's also about shedding the mental habits or ideas that no longer serve you. There's also an emotional aspect to this process. Sometimes we need to forget difficult moments, not to erase them completely, but to reduce their emotional intensity so we can move forward. This form of forgetting helps us process pain, grow from experience, and stay open to new opportunities. Emotional memory is powerful, but holding on too tightly to every past failure or regret can make it difficult to learn and evolve. Research in neuroscience supports this view. Studies suggest that forgetting is an active process driven by mechanisms in the brain such as synaptic pruning that help us fine-tune our memory networks. It's a bit like trimming a tree. By removing unnecessary branches, we allow the strongest and healthiest parts to grow. So while our culture often glorifies memory, celebrating people who can recite endless facts or recall events in vivid detail, it's important to recognize the value of forgetting. It's not a sign of weakness or decline. Rather, it's a sign that the brain is doing what it was designed to do: adapt, evolve, and support lifelong learning. In this light, occasional forgetfulness becomes not just understandable, but essential. It's a quiet, behind-the-scenes function that keeps our minds nimble, our memories relevant, and our capacity for growth wide open. Forgetfulness can be protective. How the mind heals through letting go. When we think of forgetfulness, we often associate it with inconvenience or loss. But what if forgetting is in many cases the brain's way of protecting us? Beyond the mechanics of memory and learning, forgetfulness can serve a deeply human function, preserving emotional balance, reducing stress, and supporting our ability to heal from pain. Life is filled with experiences, some joyful, some difficult. While we carry important lessons from both, not every memory needs to stay at the forefront of our minds. In fact, holding on to every single detail, especially the painful ones, can weigh us down and hinder our emotional well-being. Forgetfulness in this sense becomes a kind of mental self-care. Consider the emotional intensity of a breakup, a personal loss, or a traumatic event. In the immediate aftermath, memories of those moments may feel sharp, persistent, and overwhelming. However, over time, the edges begin to soften. Specific details fade, and the emotional charge diminishes. This natural process isn't a failure of memory, it's the brain's way of helping us move forward. Forgetting in this context is not about erasing, but about healing. Psychologists often refer to this as emotional memory regulation. Our minds are wired to prioritize survival and long-term health. Holding on to every emotionally painful memory in full clarity would quickly become debilitating. By gradually releasing the intensity of certain memories, our brain allows us to regain balance and avoid being consumed by past pain. There's also a practical benefit to this kind of forgetfulness. It reduces mental clutter and emotional overload. If our minds were filled with every argument, every disappointment, and every fear we've ever experienced, it would be incredibly difficult to focus on the present or plan for the future. Forgetting helps us stay anchored in the here and now. It frees up emotional bandwidth for meaningful relationships, creative problem solving, and personal growth. Interestingly, this protective function of forgetfulness is closely tied to how we manage stress. Chronic stress is known to impair memory in certain areas of the brain, such as the hippocampus. But the reverse is also true. The strategic forgetting of unnecessary stressors can actually help the brain recover and function more effectively. Forgetfulness can serve as a natural buffer against long-term anxiety and mental exhaustion. Moreover, forgetting plays a role in forgiveness, not just toward others, but toward ourselves. When we ruminate on past mistakes or moments of failure, it becomes difficult to grow beyond them. By loosening our grip on these memories, not necessarily forgetting them entirely, but allowing their power over us to fade, we open up space for self-compassion and resilience. This isn't denial. It's healing. There's even growing evidence that our brains selectively forget details that are no longer useful to our identity or goals. In other words, if a memory doesn't contribute to our current understanding of who we are or where we're headed, the brain may downplay or let it go entirely. This kind of emotional prioritization helps us evolve emotionally and psychologically into more adaptive, focused individuals. Ultimately, forgetfulness is not just a cognitive lapse. It's a quiet act of preservation. It shields us from emotional overload, helps us recover from life's harder moments, and gives us the mental space to thrive. It's the mind's way of saying, you don't need to carry all of this. In letting go, we protect what matters most, our ability to feel, to grow, and to keep moving forward. So the next time you forget a painful detail or find it harder to recall the sharpness of an old wound, know that your brain might be doing exactly what it needs to do, healing, protecting, and making space for a better tomorrow. Mental flexibility equals longevity. How forgetfulness supports a longer, healthier life. When it comes to aging, memory loss is often seen as something to fear. But emerging research and real-life observations suggest a surprising and more hopeful narrative. Forgetting minor details might actually be a sign of mental flexibility, and that flexibility can be a quiet key to longevity. As we grow older, life presents new challenges, transitions, and emotional adjustments. The ability to adapt to these changes is not just a marker of emotional intelligence, it's strongly tied to long-term well-being. And here's where forgetfulness plays a surprisingly positive role. Letting go of small, insignificant details like forgetting where you left your glasses or momentarily blanking on a name can indicate that the brain is prioritizing what matters most. Rather than overloading the system with every piece of information, the mind is choosing to conserve energy and focus on what is relevant to current goals, relationships, and emotional needs. This process helps older adults remain grounded and less overwhelmed in an increasingly complex world. Mental flexibility, defined as the ability to shift perspectives, adapt behavior, and remain open to new experiences, becomes more important with age. Seniors who show this kind of flexibility tend to adjust more easily to life's inevitable changes, such as retirement, loss of loved ones, physical limitations, or moving to new environments. And interestingly, those who accept occasional forgetfulness as a natural part of life, rather than fighting or fearing it, often maintain greater emotional balance. In fact, studies show that older adults who are mentally adaptable and emotionally resilient are more likely to experience better health outcomes, lower rates of depression, and even longer lifespans. These individuals don't cling rigidly to the past or obsess over every forgotten appointment or word. Instead, they navigate the present with grace and curiosity, which has a direct impact on both mental and physical health. One possible explanation for this connection is that flexibility reduces stress. The more adaptable a person is, the less likely they are to experience chronic stress in response to change or uncertainty. And since prolonged stress is associated with a host of health issues, from heart disease to weakened immune function, those who are mentally flexible tend to age more healthfully. Moreover, emotional regulation is often better preserved in individuals who forget selectively. This means they are more likely to let go of old grudges, stressful details, or emotionally charged memories that no longer serve them. They forgive, more easily accept imperfection, and focus their energy on what brings joy or meaning. This lightness of spirit is not a sign of cognitive decline, it's a sign of wisdom in action. We also see this phenomenon in social relationships. Older adults who aren't preoccupied with remembering every slight or misstep tend to enjoy deeper, more harmonious connections with others. They live more in the present, enjoying the moment, rather than reliving the past or trying to control every detail of the future. This openness fosters stronger social ties, another proven factor linked to longer life expectancy. Importantly, this does not mean all forgetfulness is benign. There's a difference between the occasional mental slip and memory loss that significantly disrupts daily life. But within the spectrum of normal aging, forgetfulness can be reinterpreted not as decline, but as the brain streamlining its processes to remain flexible, present, and emotionally intelligent. In the end, the goal of aging isn't just to remember more, it's to live well. And sometimes living well means forgetting just enough to stay light-focused and open to the ever-changing nature of life. In this way, forgetfulness becomes a quiet strength, a tool that supports not only peace of mind, but longevity itself. Memory loss versus memory disease. Understanding the difference. It's natural to feel concerned when memory slips become more frequent. Forgetting names, misplacing everyday objects, or occasionally blanking on appointments can be unsettling. But it's important to understand that not all memory loss is created equal. In fact, many of these common experiences are simply part of normal aging, not signs of disease. As we age, our brains change just like the rest of our bodies. Processing speed may slow down a bit, recall might take longer, and occasional lapses in attention or memory can occur. This kind of memory loss is usually mild, manageable, and doesn't interfere with day-to-day functioning. It might look like walking into a room and forgetting why, or having a word on the tip of your tongue. These moments can be frustrating, but they are normal and even expected. On the other hand, memory diseases such as Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia present in more serious and consistent ways. These conditions go beyond simple forgetfulness and begin to affect how a person thinks, behaves, and interacts with the world around them. The differences may seem subtle at first, but over time they become more disruptive and harder to ignore. Here are some warning signs that memory issues may be something more serious. Repeated questions. Asking the same question over and over, even after being answered, may indicate the brain isn't storing or accessing recent information. Confusion in familiar places. Getting lost on a familiar route, such as the way home from the grocery store or a friend's house, is a red flag. People with dementia may lose their sense of direction or spatial awareness. Personality changes. Dramatic shifts in mood behavior or personality, such as becoming unusually suspicious, irritable, or withdrawn, may be signs of deeper neurological changes, especially if they are uncharacteristic for the person. Withdrawal from activities. People may begin avoiding social engagements, hobbies, or conversations they once enjoyed. This may be because they're struggling to follow along or feel embarrassed about their memory lapses. Consistent disorientation or unsafe behaviors. Leaving the stove on, wandering outside in the middle of the night, or forgetting to take essential medications regularly are serious signs that someone may no longer be functioning safely on their own. Recognizing the distinction between normal forgetfulness and potential memory disease is essential for early detection and intervention. The earlier these changes are identified and addressed, the more options a person has for support care and medical treatment. It's also helpful to know that not all cognitive decline is due to Alzheimer's or dementia. Conditions such as depression medication, side effects, sleep disorders, thyroid problems, or vitamin deficiencies can also mimic symptoms of memory disease. That's why a thorough medical evaluation is key when changes become concerning. If you or a loved one is experiencing persistent memory issues that interfere with daily life, it's worth speaking to a healthcare professional. Memory tests, neurological evaluations, and imaging can help determine whether the cause is part of normal aging or something that needs further attention. Meanwhile, for most people, occasional memory lapses are nothing to fear. They are simply the brain's way of managing a lifetime of information and prioritizing what matters most in the moment. Understanding the difference between everyday forgetfulness and disease-related memory loss helps reduce unnecessary anxiety and empowers individuals to seek help when needed. Knowledge, after all, is one of the best tools we have in supporting both brain health and overall quality of life. Embrace the shift, not fear it, finding wisdom and joy in letting go of perfection. In a world that prizes sharpness, speed, and constant recall, forgetfulness is often misunderstood as failure. But for many older adults, embracing forgetfulness, not fearing it, can be the beginning of a more peaceful, meaningful chapter of life. Take Helen, for example. In her early 70s, she began noticing little changes, forgetting why she entered a room or occasionally misplacing her phone. At first, she panicked, fearing the worst. But after speaking with her doctor and learning more about the normal changes that come with aging, Helen chose to shift her mindset. She started writing things down more often, asking for help when needed, and letting go of the shame she'd attached to these small lapses. Once I stopped fighting it, she says, I found more energy to enjoy my days instead of worrying about every little slip. Then there's Frank, 79, a retired teacher, known for his deep knowledge of history and poetry. He jokes about how he sometimes forgets the names of former students or can't recall certain dates as quickly. But instead of being frustrated, he sees it as an opportunity to connect. I tell people, help me remember. And they do. It turns into a conversation, not a failure. Clara, 68, went through a tough period of grief after losing her partner. She found herself emotionally foggy, forgetful, and detached. But as she gave herself time to heal, she realized that forgetfulness was part of how her mind was protecting her, letting go of overwhelming details so she could focus on the essential self-care, close friends, and rediscovering joy. Now she practices mindfulness journals daily and finds that by accepting her memory as it is, she feels more present than ever before. George, 82. Once a meticulous engineer laughs when he forgets the punchline of a joke halfway through. I used to be embarrassed, he admits. Now I just say, Well, it must not have been that funny, and we all laugh anyway. He's found that humor and a bit of humility can be powerful tools for staying connected and happy. These stories share a common thread. Each person chose to embrace the natural shifts in memory that come with age rather than resist or fear them. And in doing so, they discovered something surprising: greater peace, richer relationships, and even a renewed sense of purpose. Forgetfulness, when it's not a sign of disease, can be a gentle reminder that we don't need to carry everything all the time. It's okay to forget a detail, take longer to recall a name, or need a little help. What matters most is how we respond with compassion, patience, and even humor. Letting go of the pressure to be perfect or to stay sharp at all costs allows space for deeper connections, creative thinking, and emotional resilience. Memory is important, but so is presence, and often the two don't always go hand in hand. Aging brings with it many changes, but also gifts, perspective, calm, and the freedom to live more intentionally. Embracing forgetfulness as a part of life, rather than something to fear, can open the door to these gifts in ways that constant striving never could. So when the next forgotten name or misplaced item arises, take a breath, smile, and remember this too is part of the journey. One that, with acceptance, can be full of peace, connection, and joy. The brain is not a hard drive. Why forgetting is part of a healthy, living mind. Many people think of the brain like a computer, a hard drive that should store everything forever. But that's not how our minds actually work. Unlike a computer that saves files, until you delete them, the brain is a living, breathing, adaptive organ. It grows, evolves, and perhaps most importantly, lets go of information it doesn't need. This act of forgetting is not a flaw, it's a feature. The human brain is designed to prioritize, not preserve every detail. If we remembered every sound, word, face, and fact we encountered, we'd quickly become overwhelmed. Forgetting allows us to filter out the noise and focus on what matters most in a given moment, whether it's solving a problem, learning something new, or simply being present with someone we care about. Selective forgetting creates space. It makes room for new learning, flexible thinking, and emotional adaptation. For example, when you forget an old phone number that you no longer use, it's not a loss. It's your brain clearing away clutter to make space for current, relevant knowledge. In this way, memory and forgetting work together to keep us mentally efficient and emotionally balanced. Researchers have found that the brain actually works harder to forget than to remember. This suggests that forgetting is an active, intentional process, not a passive breakdown. Certain brain regions, like the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, regulate which memories are kept and which are let go. They prioritize emotionally meaningful or frequently used information and allow less relevant memories to fade naturally. This is especially important as we age. The brain becomes more selective, not necessarily weaker. Older adults often remember emotionally significant experiences more vividly, while everyday details may slip away more quickly. This shift reflects the brain's tendency to focus on meaning rather than minutiae, a sign of mental maturity, not decline. Forgetfulness can also support emotional well-being. Holding on to every painful memory or mistake would make it difficult to move forward. Letting go helps us heal, adapt, and grow. By forgetting what no longer serves us, the brain helps us stay anchored in the present and hopeful for the future. Think of it this way: your brain is less like a storage locker and more like a garden. You can't keep every plant alive forever. Some are pruned to make room for new growth. Others bloom, fade, and are replaced by what the season requires. The beauty of the garden doesn't come from preserving every leaf. It comes from its ability to change. So when you forget a small detail, don't assume your brain is failing. More likely, it's functioning exactly as it should, making room for what truly matters. How to support brain health. Simple habits. that nurture a resilient, adaptive mind, while occasional forgetfulness is a normal and even healthy part of life. There are many ways to actively support brain function as we age. The brain is remarkably adaptable. It thrives when challenged, comforted, and cared for. These small, intentional actions can help strengthen cognitive resilience and emotional well-being. Stay engaged. Keeping your mind active is one of the best ways to maintain mental sharpness. Read books, explore new subjects, play games that involve strategy or memory, and keep learning even if it's just a new recipe or a different walking route. Curiosity exercises the brain much like physical activity strengthens the body. Try new things. New experiences create new neural connections. Whether it's learning a language, picking up an instrument, or trying a creative hobby like painting or dancing novelty, helps the brain stay flexible and adaptive. These activities can boost problem-solving skills, memory, and even mood. Connect with others. Social interaction is vital for brain health. Conversations, shared laughter, and deep connections stimulate cognitive processing, language, and emotional regulation. Isolation, on the other hand, has been linked to cognitive decline. Make time to chat with a friend, join a group, or participate in a community event. Embrace laughter and joy. A good laugh doesn't just feel good, it's good for your brain. Laughter reduces stress, improves mood, and encourages social bonding. It also activates multiple areas of the brain, including those related to memory, learning, and creativity. Find humor in everyday life, watch something funny, or recall joyful memories. Move your body. Physical activity supports brain health by improving circulation, reducing inflammation, and stimulating the release of brain-friendly chemicals like endorphins and growth factors. You don't need to run marathons. Gentle movement like walking, stretching, or dancing can be just as beneficial. Prioritize rest and sleep. The brain consolidates memories and clears away toxins during sleep. Lack of rest can lead to mental fog, emotional imbalance, and increased forgetfulness. Aim for consistent, high-quality sleep and allow yourself downtime during the day to relax and reset. Give yourself grace. Most importantly, be kind to yourself. Forgetting names, losing your train of thought, or misplacing an object doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. Beating yourself up over memory slips can increase anxiety, which ironically makes memory worse. Instead, take a breath, laugh at the moment, and move on with compassion. Your brain is not a machine that needs fixing. It's a living part of you that grows through love, challenge, and care. By staying engaged, trying new things, and accepting forgetfulness as part of life, you support a healthy, joyful, and meaningful aging journey. Compassionate perspective on aging. Forgetting is not failure. It is a natural part of how we grow older with wisdom, grace, and emotional clarity. Instead of fearing memory slips or seeing them as signs of weakness, we can view them as reminders that our brains are dynamic, protective, and adaptable. A compassionate perspective means recognizing that aging brings shifts, not just losses, and that these changes often foster deeper insight, patience, and acceptance. Forgetfulness can be a sign that the brain is prioritizing what truly matters, allowing space for healing and emotional balance. By embracing this view, seniors can live with more peace and self-love. They can celebrate the richness of their life experiences without being weighed down by every small lapse. Loved ones and caregivers, too, benefit by responding with kindness and understanding rather than frustration. Ultimately, accepting forgetfulness as part of the aging journey helps us all focus on what really counts: meaningful relationships, joy in the present moment, and the continued growth of the human spirit. Conclusion. Forgetfulness, when experienced as a natural part of aging, is not something to fear, but to understand and embrace. It reflects the brain's incredible ability to adapt, prioritize, and protect both our mental and emotional health. By distinguishing normal memory changes from signs of disease, we can approach aging with clarity and confidence. Embracing forgetfulness with compassion allows us to live with greater peace, joy, and wisdom. It reminds us that growing older is not about loss alone, but about transformation, letting go of what no longer serves us to make room for new experiences, connections, and growth. By staying engaged, nurturing our minds, and showing ourselves grace, we support brain health and promote a vibrant, fulfilling life at any age. Ultimately, forgetfulness teaches us that aging is a journey of resilience and renewal, rich with emotional clarity and the potential for lasting happiness.